The dust clouds rose as the stagecoach rumbled away, carrying away the only woman Lucas Jameson had ever loved, along with a secret he wouldn't discover until years later. Clara Davis clutched her stomach, the small bump barely visible beneath her traveling dress, tears streaming down her face as she watched the man she'd once pledged her heart to fade into the horizon of 1872 Wyoming Territory. 5 years later, a spring morning in 1877 found Clara standing on the porch of her modest cabin in the small settlement of Pinecrest, Colorado Territory. The mountain air was crisp, and wildflowers dotted the meadows stretching before her modest home. She watched her daughter, Emma, chasing butterflies, her dark curls bouncing with each step, curls that matched her father's exactly. "Emma, breakfast is ready," Clara called, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. At 4 years old, Emma was already showing the strong will and determination that defined her father. "Coming, Mama!" The little girl's voice rang out across the meadow. Clara had built a life here, a small but respectable one. She worked as a schoolteacher in the growing settlement, and while the townsfolk had initially raised eyebrows at a young unmarried woman with a child, her kindness and dedication had eventually won them over. Still, not a day passed when she didn't think of Lucas and the life they might have had. She'd left him without explanation, without goodbye. The memory of their final argument still haunted her dreams. His ambition, his recklessness, the dangerous men he'd begun riding with, she couldn't bring a child into that life. So she'd fled, choosing her unborn baby's safety over the love that had consumed her since she was 18. 200 miles away, Lucas Jameson adjusted his hat as he rode into the town of Silverdale. The years had hardened him, leaving lines at the corners of his eyes and a perpetual furrow in his brow. His reputation as one of the fastest guns in the territory had grown, though he'd long since stopped riding with the Harker gang, choosing instead to work as a hired gun for stagecoach companies and banks, legitimate work, though still dangerous. "Jameson!" The station master waved him down. "Got a letter for you." Lucas dismounted, dust rising around his boots as he approached. Letters were rare in his line of work. Most folks who knew him well enough to write were either dead or had long since stopped caring where he'd ended up. "Thanks," he muttered, tucking the envelope into his vest pocket without examining it. Whatever news it contained could wait until after he'd had a drink to wash away the trail dust. The saloon was quiet this early in the day. Lucas settled at a corner table, ordered whiskey, and finally pulled out the envelope. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the contents changed his life in 12 simple words. "Clara Davis is in Pinecrest. She has a daughter. The child is yours." The letter was signed only by "A friend who thinks you should know." Lucas stared at the paper until the words blurred. A daughter. He had a daughter. And Clara, the woman whose absence had left a hole in his chest that no amount of whiskey or gunfights could fill, was alive and well in Colorado. His first instinct was anger. She'd hidden his own child from him for years. His second thought was more sobering. She'd had her reasons. The man he'd been back then was no father material. The question was whether the man he'd become was any better. 3 days later, Clara was organizing her classroom when Emma burst through the door, her face alight with excitement. "Mama! There's a man with the most beautiful horse outside. He let me pet it." Clara smiled, arranging the readers on the children's desks. "That's nice, sweetheart. Was Mrs. Wilson watching you?" "Yes, but the man asked my name and I told him. He seemed surprised. He has a funny look, Mama. Like he might cry but also might laugh." Clara's hand froze mid-motion. A cold fear gripped her heart. What did this man look like, Emma? Tall. With a black hat and a star on his chest. And eyes like mine. The readers fell from Clara's suddenly nerveless fingers. She rushed to the window, peering through the glass, and her worst fear was confirmed. Lucas Jameson, looking older, harder, but unmistakably him, was tethering his horse to the post outside the schoolhouse. "Emma, go to Mrs. Wilson's house right now. Tell her I need a few minutes." "But Mama, now, Emma." Her voice was sharper than she intended, but panic was rising in her throat. How had he found them? What did he want? Once Emma had reluctantly departed through the back door, Clara took a deep breath and stepped onto the schoolhouse porch. Lucas looked up, and their eyes met for the first time in 5 years. Time seemed to stop. The busy street, the distant mountains, the blue Colorado sky, everything disappeared except for Lucas's face. He removed his hat, revealing the dark curls that matched their daughter's exactly. Clara. Just her name, spoken in that deep voice that had haunted her dreams. How did you find us? Her own voice was barely a whisper. Got a letter. He took a step closer, stopping when she instinctively backed away. Is it true? Is she mine? There was no point in lying. Emma's resemblance to Lucas was unmistakable. Yes. A muscle tightened in his jaw. Were you ever going to tell me? I don't know, she admitted, wrapping her arms around herself. The life you were living, the men you rode with, I couldn't bring a child into that. I would have changed. The words hung between them, heavy with regret. Would you have? Clara challenged. The night before I left, you came home at dawn with a bullet graze on your arm and wouldn't tell me what happened. The Harker gang had just robbed the Westfield Bank. 3 people died, Lucas. I wasn't part of that. His voice was hard. I told you then, and I'm telling you now. Yes, I rode with them sometimes, but never for the killings. Never for the bank jobs. But you knew what they were doing, and you stayed. Lucas looked down at his boots, then back up at her. His eyes were pained but clear. I left them. After you disappeared. Been working as a security man for the Western Stage Line for 4 years now. Got a badge and everything. He tapped the silver star pin to his vest. Clara's heart stuttered. You changed? Had to. Waking up and finding you gone. He swallowed hard. It broke something in me, Clara. Made me look at who I was becoming. I didn't like what I saw. A small voice from behind Clara interrupted their charged conversation. Mama? Mrs. Wilson said I should come back now. Emma peered around her mother's skirts, eyeing Lucas with undisguised curiosity. Lucas's expression transformed. The hardness melted away, replaced by wonder as he gazed at his daughter. Clara saw his throat work as he struggled to speak. Hello again, Emma. He managed finally. You know my name, but I don't know yours, Emma said with the direct honesty of childhood. Lucas knelt down to her level, keeping a respectful distance. My name is Lucas Jameson. His eyes flicked up to Clara's, seeking permission before he continued. Clara gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. I'm an old friend of your mother's, Lucas continued. I've come a long way to meet you both. Emma studied him with a seriousness that belied her years. Your eyes are like mine. Yes, Lucas agreed softly. They are. Clara felt tears threatening. Emma, please go to the back of the classroom and practice your letters. I need to speak with Mr. Jameson. Once Emma was out of earshot, Clara faced Lucas. Why are you really here? What do you want? To know my daughter, he answered without hesitation. And to understand why you left without a word. I told you why. You could have talked to me, Clara. Given me a chance. I was scared, she admitted. Not just of the life you were living, but of what you might say. That you wouldn't want the responsibility. That you'd resent us both. Lucas's face darkened with pain. I've loved you since we were barely more than children ourselves. Did you really think so little of me? Before Clara could answer, the school bell rang, signaling the imminent arrival of her students. I can't do this now, she said desperately. I have class. Lucas settled his hat back on his head. I've taken a room at the boarding house. I'll be here for a while, Clara. We have a lot to talk about. His eyes drifted to Emma, who was carefully forming letters at a desk. She's beautiful. Looks just like you. She has your curls, Clara replied softly. And your stubbornness. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Poor child. He backed toward the door. I'll call on you this evening, if that's acceptable. It wasn't a request she could refuse, not when he'd come so far. Not when he'd found out about the daughter she'd kept from him. 7 o'clock. We'll have dinner. After Lucas left, Clara struggled through her teaching day, her mind replaying their conversation. The students noticed her distraction, but she managed to maintain some semblance of normalcy until dismissal time. As she walked home with Emma, her daughter bombarded her with questions about the stranger with the nice horse and the familiar eyes. Is he staying in town long, Mama? Can I ride his horse? How do you know him? Clara chose her words carefully. Mr. Jameson is someone I knew before you were born. He's staying for a little while, I think. I like him, Emma declared. He looks sad, though. Does he? Clara asked, surprised by her daughter's perception. Emma nodded solemnly. Like you sometimes look when you think I'm sleeping. The observation pierced Clara's heart. She hadn't realized her daughter had noticed her moments of private grief, the nights when she allowed herself to remember Lucas, to wonder what might have been. That evening, Clara prepared a simple but hearty meal of beef stew, fresh bread, and apple pie. She dressed Emma in her Sunday best and put on her own nicest dress, a deep blue that Lucas had always said matched her eyes. She told herself it was merely good manners, not an attempt to remind him of what they'd once shared. When the knock came at precisely 7 o'clock, Clara's hands trembled as she opened the door. Lucas stood there, hat in hand, his usually unruly hair slicked back with water. He'd shaved his trail stubble and changed into a clean shirt. In his free hand he held a small package wrapped in brown paper. Evening, Clara. His eyes took in her appearance, lingering briefly before shifting to Emma, who was watching from behind her mother. Evening, Miss Emma. Emma giggled at the formal address. You can just call me Emma, Mr. Jameson. Then you must call me Lucas. He stepped inside at Clara's gesture and awkwardly offered the package to Emma. I brought you something. Emma looked to her mother for permission before accepting the gift. Clara nodded, curious herself. Emma tore away the paper to reveal a small wooden horse, expertly carved and polished to a shine. Did you make this? Emma asked, eyes wide with delight. Lucas nodded. Whittled it yesterday. Thought you might like it, since you admired my horse so much. It's beautiful. Thank you. Emma impulsively hugged Lucas's legs, and Clara saw him stiffen in surprise before gently patting her head. Dinner was a strained affair, with Emma providing most of the conversation. She regaled Lucas with stories of school, her friends, and the adventures she had exploring the woods near their cabin. Lucas listened with rapt attention, asking questions and drawing her out further. Clara watched the interaction with a mixture of joy and trepidation. This was what she'd feared that Emma would take to Lucas immediately, making it all the harder when he inevitably left. After Emma was tucked into bed, Clara and Lucas sat across from each other at the kitchen table, a pot of coffee between them. The silence stretched until Lucas finally broke it. You've done well for yourselves here. We get by, Clara replied. Teaching doesn't pay much, but it's respectable work, and the town has been good to us. Does anyone know? About me, I mean. Clara shook her head. I told them my husband died before Emma was born. It was easier that way. Lucas winced at the word husband, a reminder of another promise unfulfilled between them. They talked of marriage often in those days, always someday, always after the next job, the next big score. I'm sorry, Clara. For who I was back then. For making you feel you had to run. I'm sorry too, she admitted. For not giving you a chance to be better. For taking your daughter away before you even knew about her. Lucas leaned forward, his eyes intense. I'm here now. I want to know her. I want to be her father. And then what? Clara challenged. You ride in, turn her world upside down, and then go back to your life with the stage line? Moving from town to town, always in danger? I've been saving, he countered. Have enough to buy a small spread. Been looking at land near Durango. Good cattle country. His eyes held hers. I never stopped loving you, Clara. Never stopped hoping I'd find you again someday. Clara's heart hammered in her chest. Lucas, it's been 5 years. We're different people now. Are we? He reached across the table, his calloused fingers brushing hers. Because when I look at you, I still see the girl who used to sing to the horses at her father's stable. The one who taught me to read better. The one who believed I could be more than just another gunslinger. Tears pricked at Clara's eyes. And when I look at you, I still see the boy who climbed a tree to rescue my cat. Who danced with me under the stars when there was no music. Who promised me the world and then started down a path I couldn't follow. I'm offering you a different path now, Lucas said softly. One we could walk together. The three of us. Clara withdrew her hand. It's not that simple. Emma doesn't even know you're her father. Then tell her. Lucas urged. Give me a chance to be in her life. To be in yours again, if you'll have me. I need time. Clara whispered. This is all happening so fast. Lucas nodded, understanding in his eyes. I'll be in town for 2 weeks before I need to report back. Take all the time you need. Over the next several days, Lucas became a fixture in their lives. He took Emma riding on his horse, brought her candy from the general store, and sat with her as she practiced her reading. Clara watched their bond forming, Emma's natural curiosity and Lucas's patient answers creating a foundation of trust between them. When Clara wasn't teaching, Lucas accompanied them on walks through town, to church on Sunday, and to a picnic by the creek. The townsfolk noticed, of course. Whispers followed them, speculations about the handsome lawman who'd appeared in the widow Davis's life. People are talking, Clara mentioned one evening as they sat on her porch, watching the sunset, while Emma played with her wooden horse nearby. Let them talk, Lucas replied with a shrug. Unless it bothers you? It's not that, Clara sighed. It's just. This all feels like a dream. Like any moment I'll wake up and you'll be gone again. I'm not going anywhere, Lucas assured her. Not without you and Emma. You say that now, but your job, I've already written to my boss. Lucas interrupted. Told him I'm not coming back. Asked for my final pay to be sent here. Clara stared at him, stunned. You quit? Just like that? Just like that, he confirmed. Some things are more important than a job, Clara. Some things are worth changing your whole life for. The next morning, as Clara was preparing breakfast, Emma asked the question she'd been dreading. Mama, is Lucas my papa? Clara nearly dropped the bowl she was holding. Why do you ask that, sweetheart? Because he has eyes like mine, Emma reasoned. And hair like mine. And Mrs. Wilson told her friend that you and him look at each other like you have a secret. Is that the secret? That he's my papa who didn't die? Clara sat down heavily at the table. Emma, it's complicated. Is he or isn't he? Emma persisted with the direct logic of childhood. Yes, Clara admitted finally. Lucas is your father. Emma nodded, seemingly satisfied. I thought so. Can I call him Papa now? We should talk to him about that first, Clara suggested, her mind reeling. How do you feel, knowing he's your father? Emma considered this seriously. Happy. Everyone else has a papa. Now I do too. And he makes nice horses. Her priorities established, she returned to her breakfast. When Lucas arrived later that morning, Clara pulled him aside and explained what had happened. His face registered shock, then a tentative joy. What did she say? How did she take it? She wants to know if she can call you Papa, Clara told him, watching his expression carefully. Lucas's eyes filled with tears. Yes, he whispered hoarsely. God, yes. When Emma came running to greet him, Lucas knelt down and opened his arms. Without hesitation, she flung herself into his embrace. Mama told me you're my papa, she announced. Is that all right? Lucas gathered her close, his voice thick with emotion. More than all right, Emma. It's the best news I've ever heard. Over Emma's head, his eyes met Clara's, filled with a gratitude so profound it took her breath away. In that moment, something shifted inside her. The wall she'd built around her heart began to crumble. That night, after Emma was asleep, Clara and Lucas sat by the fireplace, the dancing flames casting shadows across their faces. "She took it well," Clara observed. "Better than I expected." "Children are resilient," Lucas replied. "And Emma's smart. I think she already figured it out." "What happens now?" Clara asked, the question that had been hanging between them for days. Lucas took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "That depends on you, Clara. I've made my choice. I want a life with you and Emma. A real life, a home, a future. But I can't force you to want the same." "I never stopped loving you," Clara admitted, the words she'd held back for so long finally breaking free. "Even when I was angriest, even when I was most afraid of what your life had become, I loved you still." Lucas's breath caught. "Then give us a chance. We can start over, do things right this time. The land near Durango," Clara said thoughtfully. "Is it pretty there?" "Beautiful," Lucas assured her. "Mountains all around, good water, plenty of space for Emma to run and for us to raise a few cattle. Maybe even more children, someday." The thought of more children, brothers and sisters for Emma, a complete family, filled Clara with a yearning she'd suppressed for years. "I'd like that," she whispered. Lucas slid from his chair to one knee before her, still holding her hand. "I should have done this years ago, before everything went wrong. Clara Davis, will you marry me? Will you let me be a husband to you and a father to Emma? Will you give me the chance to be the man you always believed I could be?" Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes to all of it." 2 weeks later, they were married in the small white church in Pinecrest. Emma served as flower girl, beaming with pride as she watched her parents exchange vows. The entire town turned out for the celebration, curiosity about the whirlwind romance overcome by genuine affection for the schoolteacher and her daughter. As Clara and Lucas danced under lantern light at their modest reception, she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Happy?" he murmured into her hair. "More than I ever thought possible," she admitted. "I was so afraid for so long. Afraid you'd never change, afraid you'd resent us if you knew, afraid of letting myself love you again." "And now?" Lucas prompted, spinning her gently. "Now I'm only afraid of how much time we wasted," Clara replied. "But we have the rest of our lives to make up for it." A month later, they loaded their belongings onto a wagon and bid farewell to Pinecrest. Emma chattered excitedly about their new home, the horse Lucas had promised to teach her to ride, and the new school she would attend in Durango. As they crested the hill overlooking the valley they were leaving behind, Clara glanced at Lucas, who drove the wagon with confidence, one arm around Emma, who sat between them on the seat. "Any regrets?" she asked softly. Lucas looked at her, then at their daughter, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. "Not a single one. This is what I was meant for you and Emma, our family. Everything else was just a long road leading me home." 5 years later, the Jameson ranch was thriving. Lucas had proven to be as skilled a cattleman as he had been a lawman, turning the small spread into a prosperous operation that employed several hands. Clara taught at the local school, beloved by her students and respected by the community. Emma, now 10, was her father's shadow, learning to rope and ride with the same natural talent Lucas possessed. And they weren't alone anymore. 3-year-old twins Jacob and Joshua toddled around the ranch house, bringing chaos and joy in equal measure. Clara's hand rested on her swollen belly, where their fourth child, a girl, she was certain would arrive before winter. On a warm autumn evening, Clara found Lucas sitting on the porch swing, watching Emma teach the twins how to feed the chickens without scaring them. "Room for one more?" she asked, easing her pregnant form beside him. Lucas's arm came around her shoulders, drawing her close. "Always room for you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children, the life they'd built together unfolding before them. Clara thought back to that day in Pinecrest when Lucas had ridden back into her life. How afraid she'd been that his return would shatter the careful existence she'd created. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "About choices," Clara replied. "About how sometimes the hardest ones turn out to be the most important." Lucas nodded, understanding. "Like when you chose to leave to protect Emma. Or when I chose to find you both to become the man you deserved." "Exactly." Clara laced her fingers through his. "I'm glad you found us." "I'm glad you chose us over your pride. Best decision I ever made," Lucas affirmed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Finding you again, knowing Emma, building this life, it's more than I ever dreamed possible." As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Clara rested her head on her husband's shoulder, surrounded by the family they'd created together. The long road they'd traveled with all its pain, separation, and eventual reunion had led them here, to this moment of perfect contentment, to the love they'd nearly lost but ultimately found again. And in the fading light of day, Clara knew with absolute certainty that some journeys, no matter how difficult, were always meant to bring you home.